Stacy was very intelligent and she picks up very quickly. She always wanted to be a paralegal or a lawyer, and she was taking the courses in high school that she needed. And then she met Michael Wallace, her first husband.
Stacey Castor is one of the several criminals who has been referred to as the Black Widow. She killed both her husbands and tried to kill one of her daughters. Why did she do this? And what relationships did she have with her victims? Stay tuned before we can analyze the woman that Stacey Castor was. First, we need to take a look back at the context and timeline of her crimes. On July 24, 1967, Stacey Castor was born in Clay, New York. She was raised about 20 miles west of Syracuse, a neighborhood of Weedsport, New York. She first met Michael Wallace in 1985 when she was 17 years old. Ashley and Bree, the couple's two daughters, were born in 1988 after their marriage. Michael worked as a mechanic at night, and Stacey worked the day shift for an ambulance service. Due to their schedules, the couple rarely saw each other. Despite the fact that they both had jobs, they had trouble making ends meet, and their marital relationship began to deteriorate. There were also rumors that Stacey and Michael were both having extramarital affairs.
Stacey came to me right after Thanksgiving time, and she said, "Kim, I really want to leave Mike, what do I do?" And I gave her the name of my attorney.
Stacey took the contact information, but later decided she didn't want their issue to disrupt the coming holidays. Convinced that the timing was not right, she planned to forge ahead with the divorce after the new year. Not everyone was aware of their troubles, but people around them, including the children, did notice that Stacey became more irritable and somewhat aggressive. The problem began when Michael began experiencing strange physical health symptoms in the latter part of 1999. He was weak on his feet, coughing, and appeared swollen. He also lacked energy. Despite not drinking alcohol, he claimed to feel drunk.
Hard time walking, and he was having a hard time talking, and one time he sat up and he just vomited across the coffee table and laid back down and went back to sleep, like nothing ever happened.
Michael knew something was wrong and even went to see a doctor. He explained that he typically felt drunk even when he had not been drinking. Unfortunately, the doctor went off his symptoms alone and treated him for an ear infection before sending him home. But of course, Michael was suffering from something much worse. He was being poisoned, and everyone around him was none the wiser. By December 24th, Michael managed to attend a Christmas Eve dinner at his mum's place. His family saw that he looked worse than they had thought.
It's my brother. He was like bloated. His face was bloated, his hands were bloated. I asked him what was wrong, and he said, "I haven't been feeling well. I got a cold, that kind of stuff." Okay.
On January 11, 2000, he was discovered unconscious on a sofa in the family room of his home a few weeks later. Moments after he was found, Michael was declared dead. His 11-year-old daughter Ashley was present when he passed away. This experience weighed on her for years as she could not help but feel responsible for his death.
Came home and I called my mom to tell her that I was home, and he was laying on the couch. I got off the phone with her and I turned the TV on. I remember him making this funny noise. He put his arm up, then he put his arm back down, and that was the last time that he moved. I left to go get my sister, and I got home, and when I got home, Stacy had just got home too because she was gonna take my dad to the doctors. I remember I was standing right behind her, and when I looked in, my dad's feet were this purple color.
Michael's poor health prior to his death likely contributed to this theory that he suffered from a myocardial infarction, also known as a heart attack. The doctors believed this on the first observation and passed it on to his family.
This doctor told me that they believed he died of a heart attack. I believed that.
Stacey refused to allow an autopsy, but Michael's sister was unsure that this was the cause of death.
Autopsy, she looked at me and she says, "Rosie, he didn't like being cut up in surgery and everything like that." She says, "No." She said Michael would want us to kick back, pop a beer, have a good time, that type of thing, not cry over him.
Just like that, the secret of Michael's death was buried with him. Now widowed, Stacey Wallace inherited her late husband's $55,000 life insurance. She renovated their home and even took the girls to Disney World. The kids were happy that their mother was herself again. Stacy remarried on August 16, 2003, this time to a man named David Castor. Stacy managed the office of the air conditioning installation and repair business that David owned. He was a comfortable recent divorcee who quickly fell under Stacy's charm. Ashley and Bree disliked David at that point, and it was pretty understandable that they did not want to see their father replaced so quickly.
First, we really didn't like him. He said he didn't want to be our father and he didn't want any part of being a father. He already had his kids and he didn't want more.
The wedding took everyone by surprise, especially because nobody from David's side of the family, not even his son, David Jr., was invited. After the wedding, Stacy moved into his Liverpool home with her 2 daughters. In time, Ashley and Bree warmed up to David, and they were a happy family. But it was almost as if the bond between the girls and their new stepfather put a strain on their mother's relationship with him. By the time Ashley graduated high school, David had really stepped up to be the father she needed.
To see the smile on his face at my graduation party, it's just like he's like a proud father.
Unfortunately, at this time, the relationship between Stacy and David had gotten so bad that the couple fought constantly. On the 22nd of that month, the county sheriff's office in Syracuse, New York, received a very disturbing 911 call.
Yeah, my name is Stacey Castor. My husband has locked himself in our bedroom for the last day. I'm just getting a little concerned because I haven't talked to him since 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday when he locked me out of the bedroom.
David had locked himself in on August 22nd, 2005, when Stacy called the police. He had argued with her and locked her out of their bedroom for the whole day. And during that time, he had also refused to answer his phone.
Mentioned hurting himself or harming himself or... Friday night when we were arguing, he told me to get out, take my kids and get out. I could leave. And then 5 minutes later, he said if I left, he would make me sorry. I would be sorry if I ever left him.
She thought he might be depressed, so the police arrived quickly and forced the door open. They would discover David Castor dead, with a glass that appeared to be half full of antifreeze and a bottle of antifreeze next to his body.
Telling me that there was something more going on with this. It just wasn't right.
David initially appeared to have ended his own life, but the police soon developed suspicions after making a few findings. Stacy's fingerprints on the glass were one of them, and David's fingerprints weren't on the antifreeze bottle or the glass either. There was also a turkey baster that contained antifreeze and David's DNA, and it was discovered in the trash can. It appeared that someone was attempting to conceal it because it was tucked away under a few pieces of paper.
Antifreeze in it. What's it doing in the kitchen trash when he's locked himself in the bedroom?
It did not seem broken. In fact, it appeared to be in perfect condition. As you would agree, this all looks suspicious. So an investigation kicked off in full swing. The police obtained a court order so that they could monitor Stacy's phone calls and place cameras in various locations, such as her home and her husband's grave sites. Stacy never went to the graves of her husbands, who were buried next to each other. It took some time for the investigation of David's death to actually make headway, and in the meantime, the murderer was left to walk free. In his will, David leaves everything to his widow Stacy. From his company to his house and vehicles, everything was in Stacy's name, and not even a penny to his own son, David Jr.
Name was mentioned in it. My first feelings on that were my father really did not like me. I thought he was just pissed at me, like, wanted nothing to do with me and never wanted anything to do with me again.
District Attorney William Fitzpatrick and Detective Spinelli were convinced that David Castor was murdered by Stacy. But they did not have enough evidence against her. They needed more than a few prints because that alone would not take. They needed a confession, or at least an eyewitness. They say dead men tell no tales. But what better witness than Stacy's first husband, Michael Wallace? He could not speak, but his corpse definitely could.
2 days later, I was walking through the Criminal Investigations Division when I received a phone call from the medical examiner. And he said, hey, we just got done with the autopsy. I have the results for you. And
Said, guess what I found? He's loaded with crystals. When you are poisoned with antifreeze, crystals form in your organs, and they don't ever go away. And that was one of the reasons why we exhumed him, was so that we could find out if those crystals were still there.
So when you do an autopsy on someone who ingested antifreeze, you can see the slides of the various organs. It looks like a gold vein in a western mine somewhere. You see these little beautiful crystals popping up at you.
Those telltale crystals, the same crystals when you look side by side with David Castor from the antifreeze.
So that was like a big, yeah, we got her. Awesome.
I knew at that point we had a double homicide. Stacey Castor probably killed both her husbands.
On the 7th of September, Stacey Castor is called into the sheriff's office to meet Detective Spinelli for a second interview. Stacey was nervous and was even pacing around. Imagine her state of shock when she would also learn that Michael's body was exhumed. It was most likely this anxiety and shock that made Stacey slip up when Detective Spinelli questioned her.
There were 2 glasses sitting on the nightstand. You say that you poured him some cranberry juice at one point, right? She said, yes. And I said, I'm gonna show you a picture of those 2 glasses. I asked Stacey, do you remember which glass it was that you poured the cranberry juice in? And she looked at it and said, well, when I poured the antifreeze, and then she stopped and said, I mean the cranberry juice.
Like she realizes what she's just said.
She actually had a Freudian slip. She said, when I was pouring the antifreeze, the cranberry juice, she said it all right there.
And I looked at her and said, but you said antifreeze. And she said, you know, I don't like this. You're trying to frame me. You're trying to pin this on me, and I'm done. And she stopped the interview.
And she just said, that's it, I'm done, I want an attorney.
As I picked up my folder to put the picture back in it, it just so happened that the top picture was a picture of the turkey baster. Stacey peered at the folder and said, what is that? And I said, what? And she said, that picture. What is that picture of a turkey baster? Why is that there? And I said, don't worry about it. The interview's over.
Ashley was informed by the police that her father had died from antifreeze poisoning while the investigation was still ongoing. Meanwhile, Stacey was busy plotting and scheming the perfect course of action. She knew she was about to be charged for both murders. She did not have a lot of time on her hands, but she needed to outsmart the police. In the end, she came up with a plan, one that would make the police regret ever underestimating Stacey and just how far she was willing to go to get away with murder. On the 12th and 13th of September 2007, Ashley accepted her mother's invitation to join her for a drink. By the 14th of September, the detectives listening to the phone taps in Stacey Castor's house overheard a devastating 911 call from Stacey.
My daughter, I believe, has taken some pills.
Is she conscious?
Yes, she's normal. I'm leaning over her. Ashley, she's having trouble, I think. It sounds like there's something in her throat. Ashley. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Oh my God, this is not happening.
The police were dispatched to the Castor house immediately. When they arrived, Ashley was barely clinging to life. Stacey went on to explain that she had found an empty bottle of vodka and prescription pills next to Ashley's bed. Ashley had actually been found unresponsive on her bed by her younger sister Bree 17 hours after the second round of drinking. Bree had briefly stepped away from Ashley to tend to her sister and returned to find a note there. The note was typed on a computer and printed out, and Bree picked it up and read it. The letter's contents suggested that Ashley was confessing to the murders of her biological father and stepfather.
Remember that I love you more than anything, and I did it for you and for us. I couldn't let Daddy be mean to you and me anymore. Please forgive me, Mommy. Please don't hate me.
The note was taken from Bree by Stacey and given to the paramedics. The note was about 750 words long, and it provided intricate details as to how and why she poisoned them. But the investigators definitely knew better. A lot of things were off about the letter. Not only was it typewritten, but it was also too long. And yes, it was signed Ashley at the bottom, but they found it hard to believe that an 11-year-old at the time could come up with such an intricate and well-thought-out plan to kill her own father. The truth is, Ashley never wrote that letter, but the problem was proving it. Ashley was barely holding on to life, but she was rushed to the hospital. She needed to survive because the whole case against Stacey depended on it. The detectives felt defeated and somewhat responsible for Ashley's condition. they realized that this was the outcome of cornering Stacy.
I can tell you that that is one of the lowest moments of my life. I would have accepted partial responsibility for the death of Ashley Wallace.
Regardless of what they believed, if Ashley did not make it, Stacy Castor was going to walk free again. When Ashley was brought to the hospital, the medical staff there discovered she had a sizable amount of painkillers in her system, which could have been fatal. Ashley would have passed away in 15 minutes if Bree had not found her at that precise moment. Ashley was questioned by the police as soon as she opened her eyes. The last thing she recalled was her mother preparing an alcoholic beverage for her, which was an unusual thing for Stacy to do. Stacy was arrested after Ashley claimed she did not write the note. She was accused of forgery in relation to changes made to David Castor's will and second-degree murder in relation to Castor's death. And lastly, she was charged for attempted murder in relation to drugging Ashley Wallace. Despite the fact that the circumstances of Michael Wallace's death were used against Stacy in court, she was not charged with his murder. On February 5, 2009, Stacy received a verdict of guilty on all counts. A month later, she was given a sentence of 25 years to life in prison for killing David Castor, 25 years in jail for trying to kill Ashley, and 1 1/3 to 4 years in jail for forgery. Stacy was going to be eligible for parole in the year 2055 when she was 87 years old. But on the 11th of June 2016, her body was discovered in her cell. No foul play was thought to have occurred. Myocardial infarction was said to be the cause of death for Stacey Castor at the age of 48. So what was Stacey Castor really like? And what relationships did she have with the people around her? First, let's examine the evidence both in favor of and against the notion that Stacey Castor was guilty. So let's start with the inculpatory evidence. Stacey Castor's 2 husbands both passed away from antifreeze poisoning. The fact that it is statistically unlikely greatly reduces the pool of potential suspects because it suggests that one person, someone who interacted with both men, was responsible for both deaths. There were policies on life insurance for David Castor as well as Michael Wallace. David Castor's will was also forged by Stacy to exclude his son. Additionally, money from his estate, including savings, retirement, and similar items, went to Stacy. Ashley claimed that 2 nights before being admitted to the hospital, her mother persuaded her to consume alcohol. As for the note that was discovered next to Ashley, anyone with access to a computer could have typed it since it was written on one. Given the situation, it would seem more likely that such a note would be written by hand. Then there's the fact that the note had been written in multiple drafts while Ashley was still in school, as was discovered after a computer check. There were also no traces of Ashley's prints on the note. However, it did have Stacy's fingerprints on it. Stacy is on the phone with a friend in one of the phone conversations that the investigators recorded, and background typing sounds can be heard. The note was 700 words long, and its content hardly seemed appropriate for a teenage writer. The main purpose of the note was to confess to the crimes and express regret to Stacy. Ashley was happy to be dating, but her partner was barely mentioned in that note. Even though there were specifics about the crime's execution, they don't fit the tone of this kind of note. It seems pretty clear that Stacy wrote this in an effort to frame Ashley. Stacy Castor was questioned by the police on September 7, 2007. And in that interview, she had slipped up and said antifreeze. She backtracked, but the damage had already been done. Interestingly enough, the word antifreeze was used 4 times in the note that was discovered next to Ashley rather than antifreeze. It seems that Stacy didn't even know the name of her chosen murder weapon. The note had 2 periods and no commas. But the author of the note had no understanding of what a reader would go through dealing with that grammar, because it was like a massive run-on sentence. All these prove her guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But there are some exculpatory circumstances though. For one, Michael Wallace was said to have treated Bree preferentially over Ashley, which led to a situation in which Ashley was jealous of her sister and dissatisfied with her father. This would serve as a motive for Ashley to kill her father. Another thing that could have aided Stacy's defense was the fact that Ashley similarly had a conflict with her stepfather in the beginning. Prior to September 14, 2007, Ashley had allegedly made 2 attempts to end her life. So Stacy's defense team could assert that Ashley was already suicidal. David and Michael had the capability to end their own lives in theory, Their demise did not need to be homicides. Still, Stacy Castor was rightfully found guilty in light of all these circumstances. We believe that she was genuinely guilty and that there is no room for doubt. While some uncertainty exists in this situation, it doesn't reach the level of reasonable uncertainty. It seems clear that whoever wrote that note was responsible for David Castor's murder, because she is the only person who could have typed those drafts of the note. The cold and callous manner in which Stacy Castor's crimes were committed makes her case particularly troubling. This wasn't self-defense, because neither Michael Wallace nor David Castor were harming her. This was not a crime of passion either. It wasn't like they were constantly fighting and things spiraled out of control. For no other reason than to get their money, Stacy Castor committed the first murder and got away with it. There wouldn't have been any inquiries into how Mike Wallace died if she had never committed another crime. For whatever reason, she opted against having his body cremated as well.